Okay, so this thing says we are live. I see it's on the side loading. Oh, got it. Okay, we've been live for a couple seconds here. Here's what comments will be. One person viewing, I assume it's Jess. Jess, if that's you viewing, can you comment, please? All good. Is the audio coming through fairly clear like you would expect from the snowball, Jess? I will assume, yep.
Oh, so you can't see who's viewing, just how many.
Yeah, you can see how many people are viewing. All right, we'll give it a couple minutes to let all 3 people filter in. I guess I can kind of talk about a background. So I ran one Facebook Live event during quarantine a while ago, and it's something that we want to get a little bit more into. So we want to try and run these maybe once a month if it goes well. I'm not expecting to get lots of views. I mean, we'll post this to YouTube afterwards either way. So the first one, the topic is logos. So I'm joined here with my designer, Kayla. We've got some questions that we've prepared already, and then we will answer any other questions that come up in the comments as we go. So I guess like if you have a question that we don't answer at all, or even if you have like a follow-up or want some more detail on something that we do talk about, let us know. It's going to be pretty casual. We just kind of bring it up and just have a discussion. We'll talk about some of the experiences that we've had with some of these things. Mike's giving me the thumbs up that our audio is good as well. Good news. I don't know why I gave myself 5 minutes to test. We only needed like 30 seconds. And we'll give it 1 more minute and then we'll get started. So Kayla, is this your first time doing a video?
This is my first time doing a video.
It's exciting and terrifying.
First Facebook Live anyways.
Oh yeah, you were in our commercial.
Yeah.
You did really well in that. Our commercial was sweet. If anybody of the 3 people are watching, if you haven't seen our commercial, go watch it. It was really cool. Sick Pics did an awesome job on it. I need to keep remembering where the camera is. I wanted to record this with our much better camera that I've been making vlogs with all our nice lighting and stuff, but this camera doesn't come with the right extensions to use it as a webcam, and we thought we bought the right extensions, but I found out earlier today that we didn't. So maybe next month I'll try like 6 other extensions until I get one that does what it needs to do. Okay, we are up to 7 people, which is already more than I thought we'd get. So we will jump in with the first question. So, first question is, how do I know when my logo is out of date?
So I feel like this could be a variety of things. Generally, if your logo doesn't, if you're looking at like modern day design logos and you look at yours and it just doesn't fit that same like style and look, it's generally probably out of date, and it also comes down to like simplicity.
Yep.
And your logo being memorable and appropriate to your business. If you can't scale your logo down and see it at a really small size and be able to see that it's in fact your logo, then it's probably out of date too. Lots of old logos, I feel like businesses had a tendency to try and make their logo tell a story, or like try put like their services in the logo, which makes it way too cluttered. Your logo doesn't have to tell a story or like say exactly who you are. It's more to identify, and as time goes on, your logo will gain meaning and power as your business grows essentially. So
Yeah, I mean, if you even like go to Google right now and just Google like logo trends 2020 or 2021 or logo evolution over the last 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to see, usually led, of course, by the big guys like Google, that over time everyone's logos have become more simple and more flat. Um,
yeah.
Part of that, of course, is just that logos, like every sort of design aspect in marketing, has to continue to evolve. But another part is how applications have changed. So, where 20 years ago you didn't really need your logo to be able to fit into like a small image to be used on like social media, to be used on like your phone's apps, to be used as there's this little thing called a favicon, which if you're using a web browser and you look up at the tabs and they have like a tiny, tiny little picture of the logo, that is a favicon, and it's important, what Kayla said earlier, to have like something that can be shrunk down, because if your logo is unrecognizable as a favicon, you're going to miss out on that little piece of branding. And interestingly, actually, with favicons, Google started rolling out within the last year. When you search for something on Google, they want to start putting the favicon next to the actual results. So I know that they had the plans to do this first on mobile. I don't think it shows up on desktop yet, but I do believe it shows up on mobile. I wrote a blog about this a while ago. Have you seen that at all?
Yeah, I think it does. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of more important than ever to have a logo that can scale way down. So I guess to answer the initial question, we might get off topic. How do you know when your logo is out of date? Effectively, if you can't use it anymore in places like favicon, social media, it's out of date. If you look at it and it looks old, you might not be able to tell exactly what about it looks old, but there's lots of like shading techniques, those sort of clip art looking images that just don't translate anymore. You're not likely to be able to say what's wrong with the logo, but you'll probably be able to tell that something is wrong with your logo.
Mm-hmm. Also, if your business is growing and your logo hasn't changed for like a long time, it's probably a good idea to get it updated to fit more into a modern design. Next question.
Yeah, grab one from your side.
How do you know which fonts to use in a logo?
So to start this one out, fonts are something that's quite interesting, but a lot of people don't know about. Before I worked in a company with designers like Kayla, I mean, my only experience with fonts was using the selection of them on Microsoft Word from like, Times New Roman, Comic Sans, Joker. So if you would ask me like what logo or what font do you use, I'd be like, I don't know, just pick one of the 10. But it's one of the things that you can actually notice very quickly if somebody's using one of those like, I don't want to say necessarily crappy, but just super standard fonts versus somebody who's selected a font that makes more sense.
Also, fonts carry a lot of personality to them. So based on like the personality and almost like persona of your logo and what type of people you're trying to attract, the font you choose is super, super important in that regard. And you can go on Google and type in different types of fonts. There's sans serif, there's serif, there's handwritten, and there's script fonts, there's decorative. There's a ton of different fonts you could, play with and see which one fits your brand best.
Yeah, I do want to kind of mention, you want to be careful when looking at those like handwritten and script ones, because just by how like delicate they look, a lot of them can end up being very not scalable. Like you won't be able to shrink them down and still have them readable because there's so many, intricate thin lines. So that doesn't mean you can't use it. Like those fonts wouldn't necessarily have to be in your social media logo or your favicon, as long as you have like an icon, the little square image that goes next to it with it.
And it's also super important that your font and your symbol or icon logo speak to each other and kind of seem like they're from the same community almost.
Yeah,
it just ties the whole brand together.
Yeah, so like if your logo or if your icon has like rounded edges and it's a more like soft, fun shape, you want to make sure that you are choosing a font that as well is not just like something super blocky and like hyper, I don't know if masculine is the right word for fonts, but
you can use that word.
Something that looks like it's in the military. All Next question is, how often should a logo be updated?
I think it's about a general rule of about 5 years that it should be updated. Anything more than that, you're not keeping up with the current design trends, and your logo can get out of date pretty fast.
Yeah, and of course, there's a lot of things to consider, like um, the style in general. Like right now, for logo design, even website design in general, I keep telling people that it's kind of one of the best times to be creating these things because minimalism is like the big trend right now. And the thing about minimalism is that even though trends will continue on and it'll probably get more complex after right now, it's the minimalist stuff that has so much staying power because it's not trying wacky trends that come and go. It's just kind of it's going to be something standard. So if you have something that's super minimalist, it'll probably get you by longer than if you had something really complex.
It's timeless.
Yeah. Of course, like as trends change, like again, we didn't have the need for icons for like social media and stuff 20 years ago. So who knows what we'll need in 5 years from now? Maybe if you don't have like a virtual reality friendly logo that, shines up on a billboard or something, maybe that won't be good. But otherwise, more simple is better, which is why I love that minimalism is so in right now.
And if you do design something or get something designed that is really minimal, like you said, really simple, there's a good chance you won't have to update it as often. It can go for a long time because minimalism and like simplicity in design is not going anywhere. Next question. What's a style guide and why does it specify how big a logo should be when used in different spots? So, first part of that question, what's a style guide? So a style guide is basically like an entire documentation of your brand identity. So this includes typography, imagery, graphic elements, colors, your logo and sizes. Basically just everything you need to know about your visual identity and your brand as a whole in the way that it looks and feels. And why does it specify how big a logo should be when used in different spots? So this is important because there could be different people who take on designing for your company, or just people that might not even be designers that need to use your logo or colors in certain spots. And to have all that documentation there keeps your brand consistent in the way that it looks, and you won't stray off the path of losing brand, like you don't want to lose your brand loyalty, and that can happen if your brand is consistent or inconsistent. Sorry.
Yeah, there's this thing that I've talked about in videos a lot before called, oh, am I gonna forget what it's called today?
Dissonance?
Ooh, close. Yeah, it's called cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
And basically it's when your held beliefs conflict with new information. It gives you this very uncomfortable feeling. And so what Kayla was saying about kind of that brand loyalty and brand consistency, let's use the example of McDonald's. No matter which McDonald's you go in across, like I can't say the world because there's definitely cultural differences, but like at least here in Canada and probably in the US, you're going to be getting the same experience every time. So no matter where you go, you might be in a brand new city you've never been before. You're maybe uncomfortable with all of these new things that you haven't experienced. You know that you can rely on McDonald's because it's going to have that consistency. So if one time you went in and it no longer had that very specific McDonald's smell and it smelled instead like a tire shop, you would have this kind of immediate feeling of something is wrong and out of place. And that, whether or not we realize it immediately, can have a lot of really dangerous effects, because if you lose that, if your customers can no longer expect the same thing every time they talk to you, see your brand, they're going to get that feeling and they might not know why they're uncomfortable with your brand, but it could be enough for them to try going somewhere else. As silly as that sounds, it can really come down to these tiny pieces.
If people notice something that might be a little bit off with your brand, they might not be able to point it out, but it still can affect the way they feel about your business.
Now, on top of style guides, we've also read and talked about stuff like communication guides in the past as well. So I wanted to quickly touch on that. And kind of talk about maybe some of the differences and similarities, because I think you can have your communication guide as part of your style guide. It's less about the specific visual pieces like your logo and fonts and colors, and more so about how you are portraying your message. So anybody who you hire who's going to be like speaking publicly, talking to customers, making marketing collateral, a style guide, of course, will help them with the initial stuff. If they're making marketing collateral, again, what size can the logo be on there? How much of each color should be on there? But a communication guide will add to that what people should be saying. I guess more so how they should be saying it.
Tone of voice.
Yeah, like what is the tone of voice? You wouldn't want to have one marketing material, a poster, we'll say, that like is super like nice, light, friendly, covered in like pastel colors, and the next one is one of those like super salesy, like come in and get a 50% off deal today. You know, that kind of with this shape that you used to see on like all the like 50, you know, it's just a big punch through stamp. There are too many of those. So yeah, I guess to wrap up.
Brand consistency.
Brand consistency.
In a nutshell.
And like, I'll take it one step even further. So not just how you say things, not just how things look, but your brand comes down to every single part. Like I mentioned with McDonald's, it comes down to the smell. It comes down to what it sounds like. If they replaced all of their beeps with duck quacks, something would be wrong, and you probably would. You might go there more if you were into duck quacks.
I would go there more.
Can you imagine working there and it's just like every time, like, I don't know how I've never worked in fast food. I'm sure it's something you get used to really quickly, but every time I go in and I'm just like ordering my food and behind the counter is like beep, beep, beep. And I'm like, how do they deal with this?
Yeah.
Now imagine if that was all duck quacks. Better or worse?
Better. Just kidding.
You heard it here first. Next question. Can you use paid stock images in logos?
Photography, so raster imagery, that would be like a photo you take with your camera. That's a no, because they can't scale well. They lose their quality when enlarged. So that's just straight up no. No photography in your logo. When it comes to vector images, which are like, how do I explain a vector image?
Do you want me to explain vectors?
Yeah, in a way that's not like design terms.
It's hard. Yeah, so if you are unfamiliar with the term vector images, it's something that doesn't really have a lot of comparisons to, but I'll try to run through it really quickly here. So any image, if you have it in like, we'll say something as basic as Microsoft Paint, you zoom into it and you're going to see that it's made up of pixels. Unless you have a specific program like Adobe Illustrator, you can only work in pixels. Photography can only be in pixels. But there are programs like Illustrator that work with vectors, which if I drew out a square in a vector, no matter how close or how far away, it looks exactly the same. It's not actually made out of pixels. Where people can go wrong with that is if I take this vector image and export it and put it into like Microsoft Paint, it's going to turn into pixels because Paint can't handle the vector format. So it's important to make logos as vectors because they can scale, and depending on how you use them, if you're making marketing collateral, you make that in Illustrator. If you are making a website, you can use vectors. I probably just prattled on too long about that, but
anyways, thank you, Zack. Yeah, so vector images, if you're going to use paid stock vector images, that's kind of a gray area because it could be hard to trademark that. It could be hard to, the whole copyright thing, because it is a paid stock image, and you're also facing the risk that other people are downloading that exact same image and using it wherever they want, which is kind of weird. So it loses your brand quality, and you can't be sure that your brand is just all over the place and it's not unique to your business.
Yeah, so from like a legal perspective, generally using paid stock photos should be fine, but even with paid stock photos, you want to make sure that you're seeing what kind of like licenses you use. I think like I go to iStock Photo a lot, and I believe any image that includes like there's a lot of photographs of like Google's building that I've used. I think like those ones say that you can't like use them in a way that you make money off of them. Of course, you wouldn't want to use a picture of logo or Google's building as your logo, but make sure that you know what you're allowed to do. You might be able to make edits to an existing vector that makes it okay. We did that with our Let's Camp logo. It was like I think it was like a series of Christmas trees actually, and we took the one that we liked best and we did a bit of editing to it to make it a little bit more our own.
Yeah, that way that vector that we chose and we manipulated, it is unique to us,
Yeah.
and people can't find that and use that because it is ours. We did create that. So.
Mm-hmm.
How many colors should be in my logo? Are there too many or too few?
How many colors?
So there are definitely too many. I wouldn't go as far as saying they're too few, but I think if you stick to like 2 to 3, you should be good. Anything more than that, kind of, you want to have a scheme that will stick with you in the long run, and a scheme that people look at it and they're like, oh, that's that brand. Like, you know right away. If you have too many colors, then you kind of it could become a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, from our own experience here at Yaz, when we first remade our logo, it's basically just like our Yaz blue plus like black text. Do we have a different question here about? No, this is the only one about colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll also touch on like using black and white versions,
Mm-hmm.
but before that, so we made our logo that was just the blue, and so we had kind of decided that this blue was our only brand color. And what ended up happening, I've mentioned this in some videos before, is that we built our website with using only this color of blue plus white and some grays. And what ended up happening is it just kind of became this extremely monochromatic, like bland. It was too much of one thing. So what I want to kind of mention on that is, don't think that if you only use 1 or 2 colors in your logo that you can't also use more colors in your overall brand. It doesn't need to include all of them unless you're Google. Or Google has just taken like their 5 colors and put them each in the letter, but yeah, like although I don't know if Facebook and Twitter use other colors, but they're extremely minimalistic. Like they don't really have any color in their website other than like their logo.
Yeah, no. I've only seen the blue for Facebook or Twitter.
Maybe more on their marketing pages. Yeah, I think there's a few different shades of blue. And actually, I just remembered this before we move on to the black and white versions again. When it comes to making a logo, and this is actually a mistake that we made that we decided to just keep, there's a difference between color when it comes to digital displays and printed displays. This is something that we didn't know back then, where on a computer, colors are made up like of light. So when you put all of the colors together, you get white. When you're talking about printed color, all of the colors together make black. So the difference here is that there's a lot of colors that you can't really replicate on, at least on most printers, because they are not lit. So what we actually found is that basically the 2 blues that print best are Facebook's dark blue and Twitter's light blue. So we found our place right in between. Our color doesn't really print super well, but like as you can see by the wall behind us, there are options that help us get close, and then we've decided that we have to be fine if it doesn't always match up perfectly. Mm-hmm. Do you want to touch on the black and white logos?
Yeah. If you have, also like back to that question, if you have too many colors in your logo, it can be really hard to create your logo in black and white, which is really important. If you have like overlapping colors and like lots of, how are you going to create, you're going to have to create a bunch of different shades of gray or something, like it could be pretty difficult to do that. And then that makes me think, I wonder what Google does. They probably just have a straight black G.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Let's look into that.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and like generally, like on a white background, having your color logo is usually the easiest. If for us, anytime we use like our blue as the background, like actually in our Facebook logo, you can see that's when we use our white logo. And then if we're doing on a black background, we also use our white logo. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we don't use our black logo as much. We only use it generally if there's something that won't print well.
Like marketing collateral and stuff like that.
Yeah, like if we were just making like a letterhead or something that would be
Mm-hmm.
printed in black and white.
Yeah.
But I have seen some clients in the past that have had logos that were too complex that when they tried to create a version of it that would work for something like a letterhead, it just didn't work because there was no way to make it translate without losing a lot of the detail.
Mm-hmm.
I think we answered all the color questions.
I think so.
Oh, I'm going to leave that one for last. So the next question is, should I have different versions of my logo or just use one?
You should have different color versions of your logo for sure. So you'd have your black and white, and then you'd have your primary color of your logo. I think it depends on what type of logo you have. If you have a combination mark, you would have that logo as a file, and then you could also have a version that's just your symbol or just your icon, and they can be used interchangeably wherever.
Yeah, and you want to be able to have part of why logos have moved more into like having an icon and text. Again, we kind of mentioned earlier was for things like social media. Like I don't have the written part of our logo in our Facebook image.
Profile picture?
Yeah.
Cover photo?
Yeah. But having an icon and text also means that you can rearrange them. So depending on, I mean, this isn't really something that we've needed to do much, although I think I have done it where we have the like icon and then the text underneath. There are times where you need like more of a vertical logo if you have, especially if you have like a really long, I keep moving. The image that we're looking at is like mirrored, so I keep wanting to do my hands like more in so they could see my useless gestures, but I keep doing it this way. So, what was I saying? You forget too?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, rearranging. So yeah, if we had like our icon and then like fully Yaztech developments, we would need a version that we had like the icon and then probably like Yaztech and then developments if there was a spot that it wasn't going, like on a mobile version of a website. So on most mobile versions of websites, you have like your logo in the top left and then you have like what we call the hamburger menu, which is just like those 3 lines stacked up. If you had a really, really long logo, you would end up having to shrink it down so much that it would be like this really thin, long, and I've seen that happen, and it's really crappy because you lose every part of your logo.
Mm-hmm.
So then you want to make sure that you can, in that case, just have your icon, which is probably what I would recommend more. Because, I mean, as we've seen with like the Apple stores, if you look at, in a mall where there's an Apple store, the store does not have Apple written above it. It just has the picture of their apple with the bite out of it, you know, their super iconic logo.
Yeah.
So you want to make a logo that you can kind of work toward it having power on its own without needing the rest of your stuff with it.
Yeah, exactly. Over time, it could get there. Just like the bigger brands like Nike and Apple, like they all just have their one symbol, and that's how you know them. So.
Yeah, Nike did. Nike's a really good example of what we talked about earlier with simplistic logos. Mm-hmm. They're like swoosh or the check mark or whatever you call it. Like, I'm sure it's gone through like minimal changes. Like even Apple's has like, they've changed like the color and whether it looks 3D or flat a few times.
Yeah, but what's important is that the swoosh has always been there.
Yeah.
Through the beginning of time. Like their first logo, I remember seeing it. It said Nike and then it was a swoosh and it was like overlapping, and they just took that swoosh and simplified the heck out of it. So.
Yeah, I think there's been a ton of simplification going on. I think even like all of Burger King's new signs just say BK, and all of like the boxes of Kraft Dinner now just say KD, mm-hmm. because those things have become more like widely known and more accessible. It's easier for us to like write down BK and be like, oh yeah, that's the restaurant we're talking about. So it's just kind of good, lasting branding. Even though like this move for Burger King, rather than like making an icon of like that creepy king mascot they have or like his crown, because that's changed so drastically over the years, it probably is a much better move for them to just use their letters, because if they put the creepy king mascot guy on there, I don't know how long he'd last before he had to go. McDonald's clown. Are we still okay with McDonald's clown?
I don't know where the clown went. I haven't seen him for a while.
That's true.
Or is that just me? I haven't seen the
I
clown.
think he died with the incoming of McCafe.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
That'd be a good move too.
Okay, next question. How many words should I use in a logo? So it really depends. I was watching a really interesting, I don't want to say documentary, but it was just a video about a business, I think it was in California, and they were designing a logo for alcoholic beverage company, like a beer company, and basically they had this badge or emblem that they actually had quite a few words in there. They had like Canadian, or no, it wasn't Canadian. I don't even know what it said. Something brew company, and then they had like established in 2000 and whatever. And they had like different, like they probably had at least 8 words in there, but that's because that was a badge or like an emblem. So I guess it really depends. Like with more modern logos, you usually only see the business name and then a small title underneath. And those are like, they usually have around like 2 to 3 words. I think it depends, honestly.
Yeah.
Like yeah. I don't think that there's like too many words you can, well, there is. You don't want a whole paragraph in your logo, but yeah, I don't think there's any like strict rules on that, honestly.
Yeah, I think my general thought is like for the logo itself, like the base logo file, less is always more. I've seen a lot of businesses that try to fit like their services into their logo, but what ends up happening is they kind of shoot themselves in the foot because there's not a lot of applications you can do at that smaller scale with too much in your logo.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what they could be doing instead is having their regular logo and like if you have it on your website, put your services underneath. Like it doesn't have to be part of it. It's not that you're giving up, telling people about your business.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that people really struggle with is that they think that they need to have their services in their logo, and they think that their logo needs to say exactly who they are and what they do,
Yeah.
which isn't the case. Yeah, as I mentioned before, your logo doesn't have to tell a story. It's not love at first sight. It doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, just because they're a plumbing company doesn't mean you have to have like a sink in your logo. Like it's just to identify who you are. So
yeah, and like more after the fact than initially. I think
yeah, exactly.
initially a lot of people had like their services and their logos because you'd see it out on like a billboard and you'd be like, oh, they're a local plumber, so I'm going to need to call them.
Mm-hmm.
But now logos are a lot more for people who have already like met you or gone to your business, and it's to help them keep that familiarity and brand recognition moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they see that you're running ads and then they see that you're running ads again like the next month, having that recognition of this being something that I've seen before is like it's extremely powerful, even though it's something that we don't realize is as effective as it is. I end up talking about human psychology in my videos a lot, but the more we see something, the more comfortable we are with it. Of course, the opposite can be true if we have like bad experiences with something. But how often have you gone to like the grocery store and you're like trying to pick a new product that you've never used and you're like, oh, I've heard of them. You won't pick like the no-name brand because you've seen a commercial for like Charmin toilet paper. You're like, oh, those bears, I know those bears. Those bears don't have patches of toilet paper on their butts anymore. Like things that you don't think are important, it can end up making the decision on how people spend their time and money.
Yeah. So to wrap that up, how many words should be in a logo? You're safe just putting your business name.
Yeah.
That's a pretty safe bet. If you're gonna stray from that path and you need to include something more, keep it really simple. Because people don't want to have to like read your logo and just one glance and know who you are. That's it.
Yeah, I think my recommendation would be always don't have extra
Always
stuff.
don't.
Always don't. And then you can add extra stuff to your website, marketing collateral later on. It doesn't need to be a part of your logo.
Yeah, and if you're unsure, you can always reach out and ask us. Consult a designer; they'll always be able to help.
Mm-hmm.
How do you update a logo when you have it on all of your business cards, company vehicles, etc.? I think this comes with time, honestly. I don't think you're going to be able to update everything right away as soon as you get a new version of your logo. But that's okay because companies will do a rebrand, not a full rebrand, but a replenish, if you will. No.
A refresh,
A
update?
refresh.
Replenish, it's good.
A refresh of their brand, and they'll still have like the old marketing out there, and people will still be getting, like, for instance, if you go to Tim Hortons and they like updated their cups or something, like other people are still going to be getting those and you're still going to see them around, but over time you will roll out with a new brand, and it doesn't take that long. It's a time thing. You just have to be patient.
Yeah, and like, because this is something that's come up with clients in the past. They were afraid to refresh their logo because it had been printed on like all of their outdoor signs, all of their trucks, and they were worried that they would have to, shell out all of this money to get it all replaced now. But more so, it's just important that like the next time you get a new truck or you need to like refresh it because your logo is like old and worn out on like the side of your truck or your building, that's when you make the choice to just put in the new one. Because in the meantime, while you are transitioning, nobody's going to blame you when they see your old logo. Like they're just going to be like, oh, that's their old logo and that's their new logo, and like that's really all the thought that they're going to put into it. So it's definitely not a reason not to do it, and it will take the time it takes.
People are still going to see the old version here and there. It's just kind of how it goes. But also when you're like, when you create your initial logo, there should be a part of it that stays with you forever, if that makes sense. Like back to like the Nike swoosh. Like if you do update your logo and get a refresh, people should still be able to see it and be like, oh, that's that company, although they got a new logo, like I didn't even notice. But they should still be able to identify what company it is in most cases, hopefully. Yeah,
and like it doesn't have to necessarily be like the same, well, it probably shouldn't be the same icon because more often than not that's the piece that needs the updating, but to follow like the same general theme.
Exactly.
Like between our old logo and our new logo, they are different shapes, and a lot of people probably don't even realize that it's actually meant to have a Y in the middle for Yaztech. Those of you who do get it, you're probably like, duh. But I didn't get it when I started, and I was like, oh. So our old logo, it was actually more obvious before that it was a Y. Now it just kind of looks like more of an abstract shape, but it's still coming from that same place.
Yeah, that's actually a really good example because our initial logo was a little bit more busier, and then we took that logo and simplified it just to fit with modern design, but we didn't lose that identity that we had from the start, which is the Y.
When we were talking about these questions before today's meeting, one thing that came up that I want to discuss again, because I found it such an interesting topic, is like how our immediate response to a new logo is almost always negative, but then it grows on us. And so like most recently when Google, their G Suite did their update to like Google Workplaces or Workspace, I can't remember which one it is now. They updated like all of their like Google Meet, Gmail, all of their icons now look more similar. And we both had that kind of same initial reaction, and people all over the internet are like, have you seen Google's ugly new logos? And do you want to start on that one?
Yeah. With that, actually, that is something that will like grow with people over time, but people are so used to seeing the other set of icons that seeing something new is like, no, this can't be, like, because you're so used to the first thing, but then it just grows on you and you're like, okay, I can use this, like this is fine. You don't even notice it after a while, but your first reaction, like, again I say, and I'll say this again, design is not love at first sight.
Yeah, and what I found so interesting is when we started talking about this last time, it actually kind of started more so like both of us being like, this is one of like, this one we're not going to get used to. Like we had logical arguments, like their logos used to be more independent, I guess, like they were more recognizable as their own entities, where the newer logos kind of just more look close together. And so, when we were having this conversation, we were like, this is the problem. Like this is not a thing we're going to get used to. They've made this a functional problem. But then the more we talked about it, we're like, I mean, after we get used to them looking closer together, it's not like we're really going to confuse them, right?
Yeah.
And so both of us are like, oh, I guess this is just like every other time we have the same reaction to Google's new logos as everyone has to every logo. So, I mean, if you do change your logo and people are like, oh, I like the old one better, probably they will because it's what they're used to. I mean, same goes for like websites, any marketing, anything you change in any aspect of your life, business or personal, people are going to have a problem with it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Life lessons, I guess. If we could do editing on live videos, it'd be like life lessons. But I wouldn't because I'm lazy. Okay, so the last question that I got, we might be able to wrap this up early today, we'll see. The last one was, is there anything you would change about your own logo? So generally, no. I'm still really, really in love with our logo since we did it a year and a half ago. But the one thing that I wish we had considered a bit more, which even if we had, we probably still would have done what we... I digress. The only thing that I wish it could do is, because our logo is made up of like these three shapes that are not connected, when it comes to like, if we wanted to print stickers of it, we couldn't just print a nice sticker that was the three parts. We would have to either get like a background around the shapes, or Mike mentioned with his old logo, he tried it with like a clear background, but it really didn't end up looking good either way. And even like, I 3D printed our logo, but it ended up just being these three shapes. I could put them together, and if I wanted to like affix them to something, I could put them together. But for me to like 3D print a logo for something as one piece, I'd have to have it on some sort of like stand to hold the pieces together. Mm-hmm. That's really the only thing about our logo that would be cool if it was different, but I wouldn't give this logo up for that either way.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how like modern design changes and how our logo sticks. And if we need to change it over the years, we'll see. But for right now, I think it fits really well with modern day trends. So I don't think there's anything I would really change about it in that regard.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the next trend, and not that I can predict trends, but the next thing that seems to be coming up, not specifically in our industry yet, but like virtual reality and augmented reality, would basically just be to find out how to get like a 3D version, which I've already been able to do. Like we just add thickness to our logo, and it doesn't compromise it at all. Some complex logos it might. Actually, with complex logos, that's another thing to consider, is like, if you had a logo that was like, let's say it's like a star and it has like 100 really, really thin like points, that would be something that'd be really, really hard to like 3D print or have in any physical form. So again, a reason not to have a complex logo, because it just limits all of the things that you could be doing with it, and it makes it probably that it's harder for you to adapt when those things are necessary.
That's why simplicity is always key. That's the one rule of thumb if you're gonna design your own logo. Keep it simple. Yeah,
less is more. Like always.
Always.
I learned that first in an episode of the Magic School Bus when I was a kid. One of the students in the Magic School Bus was making like a musical instrument, and he kept adding stuff to it to make it better. And then you learn at the end of the episode that this like thing, it's got like bagpipes out the side, it's got like a violin, like it's like just a bunch of instruments like glued together. It sounds like crap, but he's like, how could it sound like crap? I just kept adding things to it, so it should be better. And it's like, no. That's not how it works. So that's all of the questions that we had submitted. We're a little early, but if anybody has any questions for us, we can answer them now, although it very well could just be our own staff watching this at this point. And if the viewers are our staff, comment so we know. And then we can just end early. Yeah. or even if there's anything you can think of that you want us to talk about next month. We wrote down like a ton of different topics that we could do. I'll be joined by hopefully a few different team members as we go through. I'm not sure which one I should do next.
I would do it again.
I'll do another one?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do the next one? Actually, it's probably best for you to do 2 in a row because you'll get less nervous.
Yeah, there's Jess. I'm still here.
Jess, our number 1 fan. Okay, so if you do see this after the fact, it'll be here on Facebook, and I'm also going to upload it to YouTube. Let me know if there is a topic or even questions about this that you want me to answer, and we can definitely have that conversation, or I can plan the next live around that. The next one's probably not going to be about logos because I don't know if we have any other questions, but we'll talk about something either design related or who has the best macaroni and cheese in town. Spoiler. I actually used to have like a list of like the top 7 macaroni and cheese places, and like all of them have ruined their macaroni. I really like macaroni and cheese, by the way. Most of them have ruined their macaroni and cheese. So like, I guess the best now would be Pink Cadillacs, but theirs is not like exciting. Like it's a really good standard. I don't need to have this conversation now.
I was gonna ask you what makes it not exciting.
Well, like they don't do any of like the breadcrumbs, and they don't like add like cheddar cheese on top so that it has like that mix. Like it's just kind of like what I could make at home with regular cheese. It's still way better than what I can make at home because I always ruin my own mac and cheese. One time I did it in the slow cooker with like bacon. That was pretty good.
It's really good.
But then the second time I tried, I like forgot ingredients, and being me, I'll try to add more of other ingredients. So like it doesn't work. This is why I'm not great at. I'm okay at cooking. I can't bake because I'm just like, we don't need baking soda. All right. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.